Hello, everyone. It's Shane Conto, your Wasteland reviewer, and welcome to the Development Hell podcast. And this is the Movie Club, and we are convening with a special Sundance version of the Movie Club as we talk about Kenneth Lonergan's "You Can Count on Me." And this released in 2000, and it's about a single mother's life is thrown into turmoil after her struggling, rarely seen younger brother returns to town. And we got Kevin, we got Vinny, and we got Jim joining us. So let's do our normal thing. Had anybody watched this before?
Nope.
I had not.
I think this is the first time across the board, and none of us has actually watched a movie that we've done on
Huh.
this, or at least it has been a while. So, to be perfectly honest, I've watched most of them that we've probably talked about beforehand, but no, this is a fresh one for all of us. But, Kevin, get us started. What were your general thoughts on the film?
Well, first of all, I think you got to dig through your archives. We got to confirm if this is the first time that's happened. Um, I didn't know anything about Kenneth Lonergan as a filmmaker going into this, so this was a really pleasant surprise for me. So I watched this with you a couple weeks ago, Shane, and
Yep.
I've been thinking about it since we watched it. A lot of things did stand out about it to me, but at the end of the day, my favorite thing about this movie was how real it felt. It felt like you were right there with the characters. It felt very slice of life. I really enjoyed Mark Ruffalo's character of Terry throughout the movie. He's obviously going through a lot of issues, as is everybody. Um, there's a lot to discuss about. I want to talk a little bit about Terry's attitude at the beginning of the movie compared to where he lands at the end. But I really enjoyed his arc in particular. It was very well done.
How about you, Vinny?
This is my first time watching it, and I was looking forward to watching it because since it was with Kenneth Lonergan, I loved Manchester by the Sea, which was also a Sundance premiere. Um, so I thought it was cool that both films he deals with subjects like de dead parents, single parents, estranged siblings with one having moved away but now returning home to deal with some personal problems. So I thought I thought it was cool to see him. I know this wasn't like really his intention, but it almost seemed like you can count on me was practice for what he would eventually end up doing 16 years later with Manchester by the Sea. And I thought the acting was great. I liked the story. Because of how much because of how like moving and sad Manchester by the Sea was. Just like the one downside for You Can Count on Me was that I guess I was kind of hoping for like a little bit more from the drama. Like I know Kevin was saying how it was like it was very slice of life. So like I guess like in that respect you really can't expect the movie to go like that big with like the emotions if it's trying to stay like I guess relatable, but I don't know. Like part of me was hoping for like just a little bit more in terms of like the emotion, especially with Mark Ruffalo's arc. And don't get me wrong, Mark Ruffalo he was great in the movie, but I guess I was just expecting like a little bit more to come out of his arc with him coming back to see his sister and his nephew and yeah, I mean, except for like this scene like near the end of the movie when he brings his nephew to see his biological father. Like I really didn't feel like there was like that much else that really hit me emotionally. But but again, I thought the acting was good, and I did like the movie. Certain issues aside, I did like the movie overall.
And then Jim, two things. One, was that a Maine Coon?
Yeah.
That
Yes, it
thing's
was.
majestic.
And yeah, he's not even full grown yet. He'll break the computer
Holy
steps
crap.
on it when he's full grown.
They're
Uh,
my favorite. And two, what are your general thoughts on You Can Count on Me?
Well, so to the first point, I'm pretty sure that either Amores Perros or one of those French films we did, none of us had seen before we did
Diabolique.
Diabolique. That's one of my favorites that we've done. Um, I really like that film. This one, yeah, Laura Linney. I think I'm most familiar with her in um, the John Adams miniseries on HBO. I think that's like kind of primarily where she lives in my headspace. Mark Ruffalo has been all over the place
Mhm.
since the Marvel appearances and Poor Things. Was it
Yep.
last year, Poor Things, or 2 years ago?
last year.
2023, yeah.
And then, like I was saying to you guys before we started filming, I'd kind of forgotten about Rory Culkin, but
Mm.
scrolling through his IMDb, he's been busy. Like he's been working. And we probably talked about him a little bit in Signs a couple months ago, and I didn't even clock that until about halfway through the movie. I was like, something about his inflection seemed really familiar. And I was like, I gotta look this kid up. Um, the slice of life stuff, the family drama, the domestic drama usually isn't my cup of tea. Um, so again, I'm kind of glad we watched this because I often find myself watching stuff like that for the club that I wouldn't put on just for myself. The generational trauma in the movie is going to keep me thinking about this movie for a while, I think. Um, I have some questions about who the kids were in the beginning of the movie and like specifics, like the cigarettes, for example, and the babysitter that was going to go smoke. I didn't know if that was Sammy as a younger person or if that was
That was it.
Sammy's
That was just a
babysitter.
babysit. That was just a babysitter, and then the
Okay.
two kids in the background were Laura Linney and Mark Ruffalo.
That
Yep.
makes more sense to me. I like that choice. Um, yeah, it's going to keep me thinking for a while. Mostly about the trauma. I liked all the characters, really. Kenneth Lonergan's definitely got a type for a leading man, I guess. Like between Mark Ruffalo in this movie and Casey Affleck in Manchester by the Sea, they had a very similar kind of hangdog, James Dean inspired countenance. I don't know that any issues got resolved. I hope you guys will weigh in on this. And maybe that's the point of the movie, but that would be where I'd start, I guess, is, did anything get resolved in this 2 hour, 2.5 hours on Pluto? Sorry, you guys, if you were watching this on Pluto. God damn it.
So, actually, before I get into my general thoughts, I'm going to bring up how Kevin and I watched this
Oh
movie.
man,
And
we tried three different ways.
so then, and then I'll quickly give my general thoughts. And then I think that's an interesting place to jump off, Jim. So I was at Kevin's a couple of weeks ago to watch this, and we did try watching it on Pluto first, and those ads were so frequent and so goddamn annoying. And I know my experience. I don't, even if it is something on Pluto or Tubi or whatever has ads, all of my streaming services pay for the non-ad tier. I don't deal with it. I don't have time for that. So we did try watching it with the ads, and then it was obnoxious. And then Kevin tried using his ad blocker on his TV, and it still wasn't working. And I wound up renting it and streaming it from my Amazon TV because I'm like, I'm not dealing with this.
That's
Yeah,
what
I hooked my
that's what
laptop
I
up to the TV, so I I had Firefox blocking everything, and it was baked in. It couldn't be helped.
yeah,
No.
yeah. Amazon is what I usually do. I mean, hey, if I got a spring $3 or $4 to rent it, I'll rent it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because I'm at the point it's like I have a full-time job, I have a part-time job. I can pay $4 and not have to deal with the inconvenience of there was an obscene amount of ads. This 2B version of this movie.
I
because
believe it
I've never
was
watched
17
anything.
ad breaks, something like that.
Oh, sorry, well, Pluto, whatever. I've never actually watched
Oh yeah.
anything on Pluto or Tubi, so I was not used to this. But anyway, general thoughts on the film. One thing that stood out to me was that this film kind of felt like filmically like a TV movie.
Hmm.
Obviously, this was a really low budget. Like, it didn't feel like something that was cinematic, and that's understandable. This was a low budget, very like family drama. There wasn't anything particularly interesting from, at least from what I can tell from just watching it, which obviously Manchester by the Sea is much more refined. 16 years later, obviously Lonergan had a better budget and stuff like that. But in general, I thought this was really pretty powerful film in terms of the performances. Laura Linney is fantastic, one of the most underappreciated actors working today, I feel like, which is interesting because Jim, when you brought up John Adams, I knew Kevin was going to react to it because Kevin kept bringing up the John Adams series with Laura Linney because
Yeah.
I have never seen that. So I know her from like stuff like Love Actually, or I
Solely.
just I rewatched Mystic River recently, and she has a pretty small screen time role in that, but she's so fantastic. Mark Ruffalo, obviously, gets a lot of attention because he's the Incredible Hulk at this point, but also between Spotlight and Poor Things and a lot of his work, he obviously has gotten a lot of attention, deservedly so, because he's a fantastic actor. I hate 99% of the characters Matthew Broderick plays in things, and he's so good at making me hate him. He just like has this vibe that I just do not like him, and but like not as like an actor. He's doing exactly what he needs to make this work. He's just so slimy, but we'll get into that. Um, but I do find also, quick side note, blink and you'll miss it. Amy Ryan appearance as their mom at the very beginning of the movie.
Oh
I
yeah.
I missed that.
Yeah, that was real quick. And then also Kenneth Lonergan as the priest was
I
hilarious.
noticed that. I noticed that.
Thought that was hilarious. And him just being like so unassuming in his interactions in the film, just like he casted himself perfectly. Because you can wind up with like Tarantino um oddly casting himself in his own movies and being awkward.
Or M. Night
Uh
Shyamalan.
Shyamalan. But like this really worked. I thought he was fantastic in his role. But I think a good jumping off point is like, does this film resolve anything? I feel like problem wise, I would like, just from my perspective of watching this film and reflecting upon this, since I did watch this a couple of weeks ago with Kevin, I don't know if anything like concrete got resolved, but I feel like more perspective and relationships evolved over the course of the film. And I feel like, especially Laura Linney's character, I feel like she has a better handle on what she wants moving forward than she did at the beginning of the film, because she's kind of in a messy place. And she's balancing probably two out of the 100 men that live in this small ass town. Uh, which that's also the interesting thing because like this is a tiny ass town in upstate New York, and I'm like I've been to towns like this, and also Mark Ruffalo. I feel like he's in a much better headspace, and even though he still like winds up going out and around, I think he's going into it in a better place than he did at the beginning of the film. Because to be frank, he was not in a good place at the beginning of this film. Like that first scene they introduce him, I'm like I was half expecting like he's probably a drug addict, probably this and that. And I feel like at least the two of them have found themselves in better places at the beginning of the film. And I feel like what they want and where they're going to go with their lives after this point has evolved. So like even if it's not like, well, Laura Linney's didn't get married or didn't get into like this relationship like we expect like Mark Ruffalo's still going off on his own. I feel like their characters have at least evolved over the course of the film, and I like that. But I guess what are your all perspectives on it?
Yeah, I think evolved and not resolved is a good way to put it. I do like how we get this particular framing at the beginning of the movie, like you just mentioned, with Mark Ruffalo's character. And we do kind of get the sense that this happens from time to time. He'll show up, and then a lot of drama might go down. It's something that happens with. There's a guy like that in every family, I feel like. And that's kind of the framing setup. But really, it's Laura Linney who needs to go through the most growth by the end of the movie. And I think in a small way she does. Because at the start of the movie, I'll say she's putting a lot of blame directly on her brother. When there's even some things going down that's circumstantial, it's maybe not necessarily even his fault. We don't get the full backstory for why he was in jail, I believe, in the beginning, do we?
I think we do. Like he picked a fight with someone.
It was a different fight, right?
Yeah.
Which
And
obviously
there
echoes
was
again.
Right.
there was a stripper and a stripper's boyfriend involved.
That's what it
You
was.
really get to know about that.
Okay. And then throughout the movie we get these little snippets of them talking about, hey, remember when we were kids, or this and that. And you start it. The movie paints a picture that they're a lot more similar than dissimilar. In some ways that maybe she wasn't ready to acknowledge until towards the end of the movie.
So I think at the end, in terms of things being resolved, like you guys said, things like nothing is really resolved 100%. But I do think in the case of Mark Ruffalo, it's like a small step in the right direction because like one of the
Yeah.
things at the end of the movie is before he leaves, his nephew wants him to come and say goodbye to him before he leaves for school. There's like a minute where like you think he's not gonna show up, but then he eventually does show up. So he shows like a little bit of growth in that. And then at the end of the movie, when he and Laura Linney are at the bus stop, he says something like remember he says remember that thing that we always used to say to each other when we were kids, and like you're never told what it was, but I feel like the thing they probably told each other when they were young was the film's title, you can
Right.
count on me. And I really think that by him by Mark Ruffalo implying that, then it means that he still has his issues, but he's taking small steps to make himself better.
I'm glad you brought up the point about him. Like you weren't 100% sure if he was going to show up. I think it's important that he did show up, but late, because it still shows that like he has room to grow, but he will be there. And I think that's the biggest change. And obviously, that makes the title more significant. Is at the beginning of the film, she has no idea if she could count on her brother at this point because he just disappeared. But even though he's leaving, I think there's a good feeling that like he will be back if she needs him. And the fact that I think he'll be more communicative at this point instead of just disappearing for months. Also, quick side note, that meal at that restaurant when he first gets into town was so damn uncomfortable. um I I know people like Sammy who will aggressively like try to resolve something very sensitive
Yeah.
in public. That scene made me feel so uncomfortable.
I wanted to discuss. Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to bring up.
I'm just like, lady, wait for you to get home. Like, come on. But like, it's so uncomfortable, but it works so well.
Yeah.
Lonergan really like wrote that scene. Laura Linney performed that perfectly, and even how Mark Ruffalo reacts to it, so good. If I was that waitress, I wouldn't be coming to bed very often.
I just wanted to compare that scene where she's kind of very righteous in the beginning of the movie when she's dealing with Terry. She is kind of shoving her religion down his throat a little bit, and then we get that juxtaposition later where she's talking to the Kenneth Lonergan character, going, "Why can't you just tell me that I'll go to hell?"
Like, I like how his whole vibe's like, do you feel like you'll go to hell?
Right,
It's like that kind of thing. It's like, I came here for answers. Stop trying to make me process
right.
this. Which
That's funny.
I
That is how
appreciate.
therapy goes. I'll often.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that he seemed
I got
more like a
Toby
therapist
vibes.
than a priest, to
I
be
got
honest.
Toby from The Office. That's kind of
Oh yeah.
those are the vibes that I was getting from the Kenneth Lonergan minister.
It's like that's the kind of priest that you need. You don't need somebody like trying to burn you, judge you, cast brimstone upon you. It's just like, do you feel like you did something wrong? Like, why do you think it's bothering you? And just that's why I love that scene with Sammy and him, and then three of them. So good. That works so well for me. But
That was an
also,
awkward scene too.
what's also interesting, Kevin, you bringing up juxtaposition, also thinking about that meal at the beginning versus their final chat before he leaves on the bus. So, like, that
Yeah.
kind of thing where it's like they're out in public and it's not becoming a show. They can have this conversation, and obviously, Sammy's still insecure and worried, but it's not that same kind of dynamic. And I think even that little scene shows how much their relationship has evolved since the beginning of the film.
I like that you guys, Shane, primarily pointed out that like um, not Sammy, Mark Ruffalo's character. Sorry, name
Carrie, right?
Terry.
Terry.
Terry's character, he needs a little bit of development. He needs to grow up a little bit. He needs to work through his issues, but he can't do it in that little town where he grew up.
Mm-hmm.
And knowing, like, I don't think she believes that he needs to leave to work through things. He knows it the whole time. Um, that's really interesting to me. But what I wanted to bring up to go back on the Arrested Development a little bit is like the kid, the Rory Culkin character, acts like he's older than he is. The Mark Ruffalo character,
Yeah.
Terry, acts younger than he is. And they kind of meet in the middle somewhere. And it was a little confusing as to like what they were like. Was the kid more mature because he had to be? Or is he, just super serious because all this shit is getting passed down to him and he doesn't really understand it? He's just kind of letting it drop on him and dealing with it as it comes. I was wondering if you guys had any thoughts on that particular relationship.
That's that's interesting because thinking about that character, it feels like one of those kinds of characters that like he just naturally is like a little old man in a kid body. And I feel like Rory Culkin really embodies that because like he did that in Signs too. I feel like that kid was like a little too smart for his own good, even arguing with his dad, out logicking Mel Gibson at certain points in Signs. I feel like it might be even like they were able to lean into that too because, or maybe because he really fit the casting. Rory Culkin makes it feel like he just has a bit of more, perspective on things than a little kid usually would have. And I think it is very purposeful that he starts in the opposite kind of position as Mark Ruffalo's character, because their dynamic is so important to the film and for each other's growth. And to the point where it's like, because the son even has moments where, like, Mark Ruffalo convinces him that he should want to go see his dad. When I feel like Mark Ruffalo really should have known, knowing his dad, that that probably shouldn't have been a good thing. Also, special shout out to Josh Lucas being a deadbeat piece of shit. Uh, he just played that so perfectly. He plays such an asshole in so many things
Like the
and does it
Hulk.
so well. So, but it's just, I, and maybe it is a circumstance of being an only child of a single mother that he does have a little bit more maturing than some other kids. But I think it's interesting that I think one of the more interesting things in the film is that relationship between Mark Ruffalo and Rory Culkin's character. I love that scene at the bar. That was just a lot of fun. Like, that was some, like, there's not many scenes in this movie that are just joy, and that was like one of the rare, like, just purely joyful scenes of them playing pool together. Because then that even turned into a fight because he and Mark Ruffalo being like, "You ratted on me," him acting like a child. Um,
Exactly. Yeah, very immature response to.
Yeah.
Despite the fact he did it.
But even though Terry is, for the most part an immature character, there are moments here and there where you see that there are things that he can teach Roy Culkin's character, because you guys just mentioned the scene in the bar. He teaches him how to play pool, and then there's a scene when Roy Culkin is watching Terry fix the plumbing in the house. He's
Yeah,
there to show him how to hammer a nail when they're at that little construction site. And then and then just like, what got me thinking was that maybe some of these are skills that either, given how Mark Ruffalo's father died in a car crash when Mark Ruffalo's character was at a young age. That got me thinking. These are, maybe these type of handyman skills are something he either a had to either learn himself, or had to have another male figure other than his dad teach him how to do that stuff. Just like how in the movie you see him as an uncle, not a father, teaching his nephew how to do that type of thing.
Yeah, and that's a good point because that happened when they were pretty young. And so I
mhm.
think, having Rory Culkin's character be the age he is no mistake when you consider that. And you got to consider these are very formative years for him.
Mhm.
He's going to be shaped by how the adults around him are behaving. And I think he's compensating a lot in his behavior. Kids are naive, but they're not stupid. And this movie does a pretty good job of showing that. He's basically in fight or flight mode for a lot of this movie, I feel like.
Hmm.
What I find interesting too is because I think the skills that Terry brings to the table as well, I think are also a result of him having to go out into the world. Because, like, how does
Yeah.
Terry make money? He does jobs like that, and he has all these skills. And I think the lessons that he can teach Rudy, the kid, are things that he has developed on his time outside of this small town. And I think it's important because, Jim, you brought up such an important point that Terry knows he has to leave to grow. And I think Terry is bringing some of those things from the world outside to Ruby and helping him and learn some of those kinds of things. And I don't know about Jim or you, Vinny, but like I know Kevin and I come from Haddon Township, which is no we like to call the Haddon Dome, where like you have like six generations of the same damn family live there. There's people who never leave. And I will tell you this, I needed to leave. And like I legitimately would move back to Haddon Township someday and be happy about that. But like I needed to go off to college. Because like Kevin knows me from before college. I was a much quieter, much more reserved person, and I needed that, like getting the hell out of where I was. And I think that's an interesting element to this film because like this town is tiny. And I think it would honestly benefit Sammy to get the hell out of there and find a new crop of men, to be honest. Which I want to ask, what are our feelings on Bob?
Oh, Bob, he's the fiance, right? Or the
Or
wannabe fiance.
could have been
Right.
fiance, or is he going to be a
Right, right.
fiance? It's just the convenient guy around.
He was giving off kind of weird vibes to me, I guess. I don't know exactly how to pinpoint it. I guess it is just one of those things where they just weren't really necessarily meant to be for each other, but they were both there, and he wanted to pursue it, and she's starting to realize that she can't. But he was kind of weird, right?
I didn't think he was that weird, but I did get the feeling that he was also
In the dynamic of the other characters, I mean,
his
he
roots
was out
were.
of place.
I got the feeling that his roots were down too, and that's maybe the most that they had in common. He didn't seem like a bad guy to me, but like um, he was also not leaving that town anytime soon, and so like why not? You know,
I'm glad she broke it off with him, though. I was afraid that she wasn't gonna.
I was afraid she was gonna get with her manager long term.
Oh yeah,
We'll get to that in a second. Which I feel like Bob is weird in how uninteresting and plain he is. Because it's like he is the very representation of this town. It's like small and offensive, bland and boring as the film presents it. And he's everything that Sammy has become comfortable with living in this town her whole entire life. And she doesn't have
yeah, comfort,
options.
right?
It's basically like if she married him, because like also I know she works at the bank. She's obviously doing well for herself that she could afford a really nice big house. Like on
Oh
her
yeah,
own.
all on her own. That's true.
Oh, in upstate New York. I know it's a small
The house
town, but
was inherited, right?
yeah. So
Oh, it was.
I guess she didn't have to pay too much, I guess. I wonder what the taxes
I think
are,
I actually
especially in
missed that detail.
2000.
I was wondering how she was paying for that too. I know it was
Like,
a different time, but damn.
she doesn't, if I remember correctly, it's been a couple weeks. There doesn't seem to be like, oh, how can I afford this? Blah blah blah. Like she seems fine. So like Bob's security, and I feel like just reinforces her life in this town. So yeah, I'm glad she didn't wind up with Bob, but I would have been really mad if she wound up with Brian. Um, ugh,
But it's just one of those other threads that she's got going on that she's struggling to maintain, right? Like she seemingly keeps getting herself into these messes, like you said, with her boss.
he is what to say about Brian. He is everything I hate about 90% of Matthew Broderick characters. He just is so slimy, and I just ugh.
No,
He
no, no, and just like that whole like brief scene when he's like bringing his wife around the office and being like, "Oh, hi, this is my wife. This is my wife." He's just introducing her to all these people who she's really never gonna have any interaction with, like at all. It's just,
well, I wonder if she will because a small ass town
oh yeah, yeah,
like
true.
gonna wind up just like they're the only people that you see. And you can tell she's not happy.
Nope.
She's not happy in this marriage. She's not happy to be at this place. She is tired. She's pregnant. And Matthew Broderick's character, like the whole he is the thing that I hate most about managers and everything I try not to be as a manager.
That is
And
good.
he just he wants to exert rules for his own ego and power because he is an emasculated man that has no control in his life and he wants to control that bank. And that's the read that I have on this man. And I feel like the only thing that Sammy sees in him is that it's exciting because it's taboo because he's married with a pregnant wife at home. And, ugh,
It's
I
that's
think
my
messy.
you're onto something there because we do hear from Terry that she used to be a wild one, back in the day, and she's pretending that that's not her anymore, but those urges are kind of coming out. I think that's a good read.
yeah. Which
Yeah, I think that was Terry's way of saying that in front of the kid without just outright saying you've always been this way.
Which, to quote one of my favorite films, Fantastic Mr. Fox, she was a town taught in her day. Is that true? It was a different time. Uh, that's exactly the vibe that I got from that interaction. Is that Sammy? I feel like this town's done this to Sammy, and
Yeah.
I feel like Sammy needs to get out too a little bit, and maybe she'll go visit Terry. Like her and Rudy could go visit Terry somewhere in Alaska or something, and get the hell out of this town for a little while. Um, that's my hope because in a weird way I feel like this film kind of felt like it could have been like a pilot to something because
Yeah.
it kind of sets up some open-endedness and in my head space in my head canon Sammy and Rudy wind up going to Alaska to visit Terry at some point and she feels a little bit more of the world and opens her horizons a little bit. It's my hope for this character.
It's a beautiful little town, though, isn't it? Like, I
It
wasn't
is.
sure what was going on with the soundtrack with that cello suite. I guess it's supposed to be comforting and warm.
Well, you know what? That's another thing because I noticed how both in this and Manchester by the Sea, Kenneth Lonergan uses like classical sort of music to help tell his stories.
Mm.
Strings have emotions. There's
Sounds
some richness in there.
I mean, it was just something I noticed that he
Yeah.
used between those two movies.
Oh, I'm not making a joke. Like I am actually serious. And I feel like that's the kind of vibe it's trying to go for is obviously like I mentioned way at the beginning of our episode that this doesn't feel the most cinematic. It kind of feels like I wouldn't be surprised if this was like a TV movie at some point, but I feel like the music's there to try to add a little bit of richness of emotions to things in the film as well. It's it is certainly you see that 90s independent filmmaking
Mhm.
coming into this. And I feel like this is very much well, obviously it's a Sundance film. So really that's it's what that is.
Yeah.
In terms of Sundance really helped that whole entire continuation of that independent film movement in the 90s. And this is in the 2000s, but it's literally 2000, so it's kind of still the 90s. It's still got that feel to a lot of those films for sure.
I got
Yeah.
really excited at the beginning of the film, like maybe, I don't know, 15 minutes in, because all the music that was coming to my ears was, Vinny, I think you taught me this word, diegetic. It was playing in,
In
uh,
the like within the movie itself,
Oh,
like the characters can hear the music.
like
exactly.
in the
First
restaurant or whatever.
four songs were coming, the characters could also hear the music until the Mark Ruffalo character shows up on the bus and that cello suite starts. Then I got a little confused. I think that would be a really cool idea to do everything diegetically, but it's probably also really hard to do. So like,
That
I
does
don't know.
sound cool.
Yeah, it would have changed the movie a lot.
It's like Sammy just casually drives around listening to some like nice cello music.
Turn the whole movie into ASMR.
It
Was Memento also 2000?
2001 or 2002.
Okay.
was definitely a yeah, it was definitely around there
Oh no,
because
no, because Insomnia was 2002, so I think Memento was like a year or two before.
was Memento a
2000,
festival
yeah.
film in 2000?
It was a
Uh,
Sundance film, but I don't know what year.
I feel like it was a festival film in 2000 and then got a theatrical release in 2001,
Yeah.
if I
Memento?
remember correctly. But
That's what it looks like. Festival in Venice, September 2000. Released in the US, March 2001.
yeah, then maybe it was at Sundance
Okay.
2001 too.
2001 probably, yeah.
2001 as well. Not
Right.
to not to throw out more numbers
Yeah.
Which
to
we've
confuse
also done.
things.
I don't know, throw up your link here, Shane. It was a while ago though. So yeah, soundtrack aside, I don't know. I don't think slice of life films are gonna be my like next thing, but I remember talking to a guy about Boyhood at a party like a few years ago now. He was ready to fight me because I had said the words nothing really happens in this movie. Like what I meant was nothing big happens in this movie, you know. He doesn't grow up and become a senator and I don't know. There's no big swell of music and a dramatic uh denouement with like I don't know, nothing's resolved in Boyhood. It just happens, you know.
Well,
Ready
also a
to,
Sundance movie.
he was ready to throw fists.
Yeah, this is not, and like Boyhood, these are not films with MacGuffins. They're not films with they're not story-driven films. They are drama-driven films, relationship-driven films.
Yeah,
Where it's like
character driven. Yeah.
like like if you told me to explain the plot of this movie, I'm not going to sit there and like and then they went to this place to get this thing and then they went to that place to get this thing. It's just it's the experience. It's living with these characters, and that's what Boyhood is. And yeah, the calm down person at party. That's all. It's one of those kinds of things where it's just like nothing of big narrative things happen. It's about the human experiences in these films. That it's why you watch it. And I'll also echo like these are not my favorite kinds of movies. I'm much more of a genre fan. Like I love science fiction, I love fantasy, I love action movies, but like when a film can deliver really impactful drama, doesn't matter if that's my thing or not. If it connects, it connects. And I did really like this.
Yeah, you have to wonder what those two went through as kids. Not to jump too far back, but I know you guys were discussing Terry's insistence on bringing the kid to meet his father. Like, I wonder what kind of stuff went down with their relationship with their parents as kids. If
It's a
that's
good
how
question.
insistent he is on that.
The subtext is completely.
We've lost Jim.
Oh, oh,
I
that sucks.
I feel like I feel like maybe what how I perceive why Mark Ruffalo's character Terry thought it was so important for him to meet his father was because he lost his father.
Yeah, I
And
was gonna say,
except my guess would be they had a good relationship because like he legitimately missed his parents. Um
right.
I don't think Josh Lucas's character is a father worth missing.
I took it as
I
more like anger that the kid's biological father didn't already do this himself.
feel like that's I well there's definitely some strong feelings that
Right.
Terry has for it's Rudy Senior, right?
Yeah, Rudy
Yes.
Senior. Yeah, he's
Yeah.
named after the guy. And
And Rudy Senior turns out to be some trailer park trash.
oh yeah,
And he turned out to be a person that you couldn't count on.
and I get the feeling like
Exactly.
to go back to what I was saying before about how these siblings are more alike than they might think. He's kind of trying to force this on the kid, right? We already know the kid is okay without the dad as it is.
Yeah.
Um, but you know, he's been so uh, scarred in his life that he's trying to take that anger out by forcing this meetup to happen
Well,
when
Kevin, you
ultimately it's
say
not the
that
right
they
call.
might be more similar than they're not. Do you mean that Terry thought it was in Rudy's best interest to meet his father, so he forced him to do it, kind of like Sammy thinks that she knows what's best for Terry and
Just
tries
what
to
I'm
force
getting
her
at. Yeah.
perspective on it?
Exactly what I'm getting at.
Hmm. So,
And
but
I
Jim,
thought they
what would you?
played that well because you get
Yeah.
the vibe that they both have that mindset and they're just butting heads about specifics when
Mhm.
it comes to whatever situation they find themselves in. But ultimately, they both have those same faults.
Jim's back here. Jim, what was your point going to be?
I think I was just trying to say that I don't understand why he forced Rudy to go meet his dad. Um, I like what Kevin just said. I got back just in time to hear Kevin's point there. Um, I was also thinking maybe he has like just no impulse control, but I think I like your explanation a lot better that it was very intentional. There was thought put into this, and
Well, I
he
think
wasn't
that's
just being
probably part of it
stupid.
too.
No, I think he does. He thought he knew better. He thought Rudy should meet his dad because you know his dad left him at such a young age. So why maybe
And I think the point that I threw in when you got cut off was that Terry lost his father and obviously misses him and missed that experience growing up with him. So obviously on some level you feel like he probably had a good relationship with his father. And I think on some level he doesn't want Rudy to potentially miss out on the relationship with his father. But the thing is he
Yeah.
should have known better because Rudy Sr. is a piece of trash. And he already knew that apparently because he obviously didn't like Rudy Sr. from the first time he talks about him earlier in the film. Um, but that's a challenging thing because I will speak to this from my experiences with this. I think what Sammy's doing isn't the best thing, is not talking about him at all. Because what
Oh,
that's going to
Sammy.
wind
Yeah.
up doing is that there's potentially going to be some resentment there. And he's probably going to seek out his father at some point. And he might wind up be like he might have been older and went on his own and had that shocking moment with his father. And that probably would have been really hard on him. And like I can speak from my experiences, like, not gonna lie, I didn't really want to spend a whole lot of time with my dad growing up. Um, but my brother did. Like he would go out of his way to try to spend time with our dad and connect with him, even though our dad wasn't present. Like I have a relationship with my dad now. There were 7 years I didn't even talk to him. Through basically most of high school and all of my undergrad of college, I did not speak to my dad. And it's an interesting thing where it's like people have different ways of dealing with that absent parent. And it's like some people want to seek that person out and some don't. And I think I think eventually Rudy probably would have wanted to seek him out because his mother kept him hidden. And I don't think that's the best thing. And like I think you don't have to just straight out say, and because this is also not good, is like your dad's a piece of trash.
Oh
Because
yeah.
then you might also create resentment. And eventually that it's like all you said were horrible things about my dad, but you also have to be honest on some level with that. But those are just my experiences being a child of divorce.
Well,
Pretty.
I think another reason why Terry probably took Rudy to see his dad is because is because 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 I think is yeah it's before that scene, I think Terry is explaining to Rudy the importance of of leaving that town and giving yourself a chance to grow. And by him taking him to by him taking him to see his father, he was probably saying, what, number one, if you stay here, possibly be the type of man who you become. And number two, if you do stay in this town, you're you're going to be too close in distance to your dad, and that might not be healthy for you going forward.
Yeah, I can see that. I guess there's a lot of danger in that he maybe didn't foresee.
Like a fist
Yeah,
fight.
formative.
Right.
Well, I don't think he was worried about his own face. Like
Yeah. Oh yeah,
formative
definitely not his
years,
own.
right? That could totally cause some trauma for an 8-year-old
I
to
would think
see.
so.
Yeah, to see this uncle who you're enamored with introduce you to your dad, who you've built up in your head to be a superhero, fighting
Yeah.
in Vietnam and all this stuff, and then they just wind up in a bloody mess on the ground. Like that's not great, but that's probably the most cinematic moment of this whole film.
Yeah.
Like maybe there needed to be some kind of a confrontation or a moment of high drama, and that made the most sense. But like in real life, probably not a good idea, you know?
No, but Terry beat the shit out of him. Like, Terry got the upper hand there. So one day
Yeah.
Rudy will realize I think Rudy Sr. needed somebody to knock his socks off.
Oh
Um,
yeah, just maybe not in front of the kid.
Probably not, but it happened that way.
Yeah, yeah. That's how
So,
it goes
well,
sometimes.
what are you gonna do now? Sometimes you can't choose when you're gonna get in a fist fight with your brother-in-law, your ex-brother-in-law. You probably could have guessed that it was going to happen when you showed up unannounced to his home with his son, who he never had any intention of ever acknowledging. But, that's just me. Probably wasn't the most. So, he probably thought about that moment a lot of that his nephew should meet his father. He probably didn't think about the actual moment a lot and how poorly that could have went and how sideways that could have went because it did. But I guess at this point, is there anything else that anybody wanted to bring up about You Can Count on Me?
Just want to give a little bit more praise to Rory Culkin again because I thought he was really a standout.
When you can get a really good child performance, I think that goes a long way. And something's in the water with those Culkin kids.
Yeah, I just like how they focus on him from time to time throughout the movie, and you can really see what he's going through. Just trying to process the trauma that his mom and his uncle have got.
Mhm.
The uncle is almost like a trying to be a stand-in for his missing dad, but he isn't his dad.
No, it's a good
A lot of
point.
processing for this kid to do.
Yeah, he's got very wise eyes, doesn't he? Very mournful old hound dog eyes.
Feel bad for him.
Yeah, I do, but I also kind of feel like he's gonna be okay.
Oh yeah, yeah,
So
I mean,
credit
yeah, I mean, he's made it this far, so
credit
right.
to Lonergan and to Rory Culkin for getting that through. Because the film didn't really. It's like I said, I'm going to think about this movie a lot, but it's not. I don't know, like The Whale or something that's going to make me be depressed for a week. There was an optimistic kind of undertone, maybe. I don't, there's a lot of like subtext and undertone. I don't know that I could use those words properly
Yeah.
to describe this movie. After this discussion, I like that you guys pointed out how brother and sister kind of they've learned so much on their own. They think they know what's better for each other. And
Mhm.
while maybe that's not true, their actions through this movie kind of punch holes in the other's universe, to quote Alex. It's one of my favorite Alexisms. Punched holes in each other's universes to a positive effect, even though their interactions, there's a lot of strife, in the day to day.
Now, Jim quoted Alex. I'm going to quote Dr. Evil. We're not so different, you and I. Because, like, honestly, at the end of the day, I feel like a lot of this movie is the siblings realizing that they aren't that different. And I think they had very different experiences in life. And I think they could probably learn a thing or two from each other. They just need to learn how to accept that a little bit better. Maybe Sammy needs to be a little less self-righteous, and Terry needs to be a little less confrontational and you know, standoffish about it. So those are kind of like my takeaways by the end.
And one last thing, since Matt's not here, I'll bring up who are we taking to Applebee's, and I'm
Not
just saying.
Rudy Sr.
No, 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 and not Laura Linney because she'll have an episode like she did with Mark Ruffalo's character.
Yeah, we're not gonna sit near them.
But if we take Terry, he's gonna get in a fight. So who are we bringing to Applebee's?
Sheriff Daryl, I
Nice.
guess.
He'll already be at Applebee's.
That's why
Definitely
you don't have to look for him.
not Brian. No way in hell. Maybe Bob. I feel like Bob would have a nice time at Applebee's.
Yeah,
He won't be the
yeah.
life of the party, but I think Bob would have a nice time.
And then if you took Rudy Jr., like he'll be nice and quiet. He'll sit there and talk with you like an adult. He'll eat his meal, and he'll like no like you won't get any issue from him.
I imagine he would be a good kid to take out to dinner. Like he wouldn't be causing a scene
No, he
like his
wouldn't.
uncle. So I feel like Rudy Senior's the kind of guy that regularly gets in fights at the bar at Applebee's.
What gives you
Ru-
that impression?
Rudy's Rudy's father Rudy's father would be the type of person they see at Applebee's drinking at 1 in the afternoon.
That's the ticket. I feel like we need to end on that one. That is a wonderful read, Vinny. So, but those are our thoughts on You Can Count on Me, our Sundance pick for this month. And next month, we have a very special episode. It is going to be the 50th film that we've covered on this movie club. And it's also our Oscar episode where we usually look at Best Picture winners. So, what's a 50-year-old Best Picture winner? It's One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest because, God, that movie's 50 years old. So, that's what we're going to be talking about next month. And hopefully, Matt and Joe can join us for that one. The therapists in the room. Um, because I have a master's in accounting, so I know people. But from Kevin, from Vinny, from Jim, and from Shane, thank you as always for tuning in and always supporting the Development Hell podcast.